What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and we're going to be going over the UFC card for this weekend from a DFS perspective. Um, Last week, as you may recall, I was actually at the big event in New Jersey, and it was a tremendous card from a real life perspective. I did feel as though it was just an okay card from a DFS perspective, and my results bore that out. Um, Now, this week is going to be much different. For a lot of different reasons. And it's also very instructive that not all DFS slates, when it comes to UFC, are created the same. And this one is no exception to that mantra. So, first of all, from a raw, I don't know, quality perspective, it's obviously much lower level. But when you do DFS for enough time, you'll realize that it doesn't really make a difference. I mean, they're not even fighters. They're not even athletes. They're not even people. They're just data points on a spreadsheet. And unfortunately, once you reach that point, you're probably at your best when it comes to making money in DFS and at your worst when it comes to being a sports fan. But that is the way it goes sometimes. And then when you really start to become, next level, you can separate the two. You can actually become a sports fan and root for who you need to root for. And then also just, do this other stuff to make money and to embrace, the numbers aspect of it. Nonetheless, that was probably one of the worst intros that I've had, but it's probably representative of the quality of the card. All right. Let's, like any other DFS slate, we'll analyze it from the perspective of, is it a good GPP card? Now, when I say what is a good GPP card, what I mean is it a card where you can compete to win a lot of money without doing all kinds of crazy stuff with your lineup construction? Is it a card where you can just play kind of good plays and have a chance to win the lottery without it being duped more than 10 times? So the way we analyze that is, number one, from a slate size perspective. And the magic number we look for is 13. So 13 is that number where, obviously more than 13, it's a gold mine. Okay. And less than 13, you usually have to engage in some funny stuff to build your lineups. When I say funny stuff, I don't mean anything egregious, just leaving salary on the table, maybe geo mean filtering, doing real kind of heavy duty artificial dupe analysis. And that's fine. It's just kind of a different way to play. So here we do have 13 fights, I think. Yeah, because the 2 fights were canceled, 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, and they were replaced. So we do have 13 fights. So that's good, right? The next thing is there a fighter who is either because of a huge line movement or a fighter change, just such an incredible mathematical lock that he's going to be difficult to fade? And unfortunately, we do have that case on this card, because you had a matchup which was actually going to be sort of interesting between where is he? Where's Modestus Bukauskas? Right. So Bukauskas was supposed to be fighting Rodolfo Bellato, which was going to be an interesting fight, but Bellato pulled out, and Bukauskas was given a replacement fighter, and he is now if you look at this, he's a minus 300 favorite. So because of the way pricing works, you can't really change the DFS pricing once it comes out. So you now have Bukauskas at 8,300, and he's minus 300 to win. So this is a theoretical mathematical lock. So he's going to be extraordinarily popular. So that is a negative when it comes to analyzing GPP cards. It just reduces the amount of unique combinations you can play that have chances to win. So so that's a negative. And we'll talk about the Bukauskas play in a second, because this type of lock is a little different than the type of lock where there's just line movement. And we're going to get to the difference in a minute. Okay. Well, so while that is a negative, the next thing that we ask is whether there's a fight which rates to be difficult to fade. And that usually refers to the main event. And that was my problem last week. Like last week, I really thought that both those 5-round fights were going to be very difficult to fade. And it turns out that they were. Now, at the end of the day, I don't even think did Strickland even make the optimal. It was a weird one because Chimaev scored like 108 points in a loss. So it was very, very strange. But the Van fight blew up and so you have those types of situations. But in this particular night, I don't think there's a fight like that. Specifically, the 5-round main event between Arnold Allen and boy, how can I not even know the name of and Ezekiel Costa? I don't think that that's a lock. Listen, it's 5 rounds, so you're going to get a better projection just because you get more volume over 5 rounds, but it feels like a fight that can go the distance without anybody really scoring all zillions of points. So that's a good thing from a GPP perspective. Is it a good fight to play? Yeah, probably, but it's not like a lock that you have to play both sides. You have to play it. So I think overall, in a really weird way, I make this fight card like almost an A. I mean, not exactly because of that Blazkowski situation, but at the very worst, a B+ and probably an A-. So I really think that you can get away with playing good plays and not being that crazy on a fight card like this. Can you play Bukakis without, and the main event? Is that too chalky? Probably. But there's other things that you can do, which we're going to get to. All right. Let's just go fight by fight. Unfortunately, the first fight is there's a couple of fights here that really don't rate the score that well, but we'll get to them. So right off the bat, you have Nicole Cagliari versus Shauna Bannon, and you have a low-level women's fight which has a very poor inside the distance line on either side. Like Cagliari is minus 250 VIG adjusted, but her inside the distance line is plus 400 or something, and that's atrocious. So unless you think that she's going to go for like a zillion takedowns and score like 110 points that way, I feel this fight is pretty darn well close to a fade. Now, Cagliari could get takedowns, I guess. I mean, she'd have 3 takedowns against Karakade, and 1 takedown, even though she lost to Carla Judice. But I don't know. She's going to be low owned. That's good. So I definitely think that in 150 max, you're going to get to some of her. But I think in analyzing who the best plays are, I don't think you will. Hey, thanks, SBOK. Very nice. So I think this first fight's probably close to a fade. All right, next one, Andre Petroski versus Cody Brundage. Boy, oh boy. I have a feeling. Well, forget my feeling. Let's take a look at the internals here. Petroski is a pure wrestler without a lot of finishing upside, so his inside the distance line is not going to really tell the story. But let's just take a look at it anyway. Petroski's inside the distance line is going to be probably I'm just going to say plus 500. Let's see. No, wow. It's plus 200 only. That's actually, I mean, not that it's great, but at least it's somewhat reasonable. And take into consideration that he could get some takedowns in control time. I think that he's actually almost reasonable. 8,900 is a tough price for him, though. I mean, I have to say. I mean, but then on the other hand, I've seen Brundage like give up a bunch of control time. I remember his fight like it was yesterday against Cedric Dumas, where he jumped guillotine several times. He ended up on his back for like the whole fight. That was an embarrassment. So I do think that Petroski can grind out like an 85-point win, but I don't think much more than that. So I think his side of it is probably going to be a fade. I think that if there's anybody I would take a shot at is maybe Brundage. And listen, it could be tilting because if things don't go his way, he's not much for fighting through it. But I mean, he is aggressive. He will go after it, and I think his inside the distance line is reasonable. Let's see. I mean, Brundage inside at plus 300. I mean, for his price, I mean, I really think this is where we're actually starting, right? I think it's a very, very strong GPP play to play Brundage. Now, again, he's going to have to fight off takedowns and all this stuff. And I do think that he's got first-round knockout upside here. So I think he's a pretty reasonable GPP play. Okay. I skipped a fight here. Actually, wow. Skipped a couple of fights. Interesting. Oh, because I was doing it in order of fight odds. No, I actually just missed it. All right, let's go back then to Daniel Barres versus Luis Garule. The pricing here is really juicy. 8,200 and 8K. So what I've said quite a bit is that even in the absence of good metrics, whenever you have a pure mid-range fight like this, you have to give it even a little extra credit. But I have a feeling that the metrics are not going to be bad either. Let's see if you can get like plus 250 for either of these guys inside the distance. Let's see. Barres inside, nah, not really. Like plus 300, plus 400. Garule plus 300. So not really. It's not the greatest, upside GPP play. But again, because of the pricing, it's kind of hard to explain. But when you have this 8,200, 8K price tag, it's just very likely to make optimal just because the way results distribute among all these other salary tiers. So I think that these guys should both be 25% owned minimum just because of their pricing. And yeah, there's some degree of upside here for either of these guys. It's not much. It does rate to go to a decision pretty heavily. So again, 20 max and below, sure, it's okay. Is this going to win you the big GPP? I don't know about that. But I probably would end up going probably market weight on either of these guys with no real opinion on either one. Another kind of gross women's fight here, Alice Ardeline versus Polyana Viana. Polyana Viana, I think every fight that she's won, I think, is in the first round. And every fight she's lost, I think, has been out of the first round. She's coming off 3 straight losses here. 3 straight submission losses. All right, I'm gonna say this about the Polyana Viana side. She really has had no chance in any of these 3. I mean, like Jacqueline Amarim, Jillian Robertson, and even Lucindo, they were like much better than her. I don't know what you expect her to do, Last time she was like kind of an even odds fighter against Jin Fry. She won first round KO with a knockdown. And here's something interesting. So against Tabitha Ritchie, now in fairness, she did lose, but she was almost favored with Tabitha Ritchie, which is kind of interesting, So I don't know. I think she might be a little underrated, just could have recency bias, possibly. Alice Ardeline, she's actually been pretty aggressive recently. She had a couple of takedowns and pretty high volume here. She hasn't really scored that many fantasy points, but I guess she's got some upside. Boy, one thing I will say about both these girls, they're both going to be pretty low owned. I don't know why, but I think that I like Polyana Viana for a very low owned bit of leverage here. Not even leverage, just kind of a nice low owned play. All right, moving on. We have another women's fight, and we have to talk about this one because this is one of my favorite fighters on the whole roster, for not the reasons you might think, but Jacqueline Cavalcante. I want to tout her for just a few minutes. So 2 years ago, I brought my daughter to Vegas with me. I had some business I had to attend to, and she really wanted to go, so I brought her with me. And I actually had tickets to the Apex, and my daughter came with me. And she met Jacqueline Cavalcante after her fight. First of all, we were watching her fight with like all of her crew, and they were rooting, and then just a really good, energetic crew. And then afterwards, Jacqueline Cavalcante, she was like talking to my daughter and took a picture with her out in the parking lot and stuff like that. Really, really sweet girl. So I root for her like all the time. And ever since then, she hasn't lost. She's been a favorite in every one of these, and she's won them all. So I'm going to continue to root for her. The problem is, from a DFS perspective, you can't play her, like ever, because she is a very, very, very technical striker who stays out of the way, doesn't get into trouble, and wins very, very nice decisions, which means that she's, good fighter, but not a good DFS fighter. So I will not be playing her in DFS, which is kind of cool. I talked earlier about how you can hopefully separate your ability to root for stuff and your ability to bet on stuff in DFS. Here's a perfect example. I'm going to be rooting for Jacqueline Cavalcante, but I don't think I'm going to have a share in DFS. As a matter of fact, I hate to say this, but I think Vieira is very live here. Okay, if you look at Caitlin Vieira, I mean, she's fought some tough dudes, even though they're girls. Like, she took Norma Dumont to a decision. Norma Dumont's really good, and she got 2 takedowns against her. And then she beat Macy Chiasson. And then she lost to Kayla Harrison. What are you going to do? She beat Kianzad. She went 3 full with Raquel Pennington. She beat Holly Holm. She beat Misha Tate. I mean, she's good, and this is a test, I think, for Cavalcante. And the good thing about it is that if in fact she wins, I don't think she wins a striking battle. I think she wins because she gets takedowns. Will she get takedowns? I don't know, but I'll tell you this. Cavalcante has not really faced a lot of takedown attempts. I thought that would end up being the case with Buena Silva last week, but Buena Silva just sat there and did nothing. Okay, that was the easiest fight I think Cavalcante has had. And I don't think that she had to deal with many takedowns. Okay, she did have a reversal against Cornole, but aside from that, she's had life pretty easy. Let's put it that way. When it comes to defending takedowns. So I hate to say this, but in DFS, I do like Vieira. So I'm going to root for Cavalcante because of all the things that I said. But I think Vieira is very, very – I think she's a very, very live underdog here. Okay, moving on. We have what became a replacement fight. That would be Tommy Gant versus Artur Miniev. And Gant brings with him stuff that we like, which is aggression and takedowns. A very, very good wrestler, very aggressive, and that's what we want to see, especially out of a $9,100 fighter. So I don't think that we don't even have an inside the distance line on him yet. Fight, we have an over -175. So I don't imagine his inside the distance line is going to be that great, but he does have some takedown upside, so I actually like him here as what could be a low-owned favorite. So I like him at 9,100. Miniev, let's take a look at the win odds. I have to say that even though I don't know much about this guy, I mean, at plus 180 win odds, to give him a price of only 7,100. I think he's got a little bit of win equity here. I don't know. So this is a very strange card. These are not the types of plays I usually like to make, but I already have like 4 underdogs that I think are pretty reasonable here. I mean, for different reasons. Like Prundage, I think just has big time upside. Okay, he could end up getting swarmed and get 12 fantasy points. Same with Viana, but Viana I just think's underrated. Vera I think has a good style possibility here. Miniev is just because of his win odds. All right, moving on, we have Ivan Erslan versus Tuco Tokos. So we have a little bit of a style issue here again. I think Tuco Tokos, if he wants to win, he's probably going to have to get the grappling going, because Ruslan is definitely a much better boxer than he is. Let's take a look at the inside the distance line, starting with the favorite here. So Ruslan inside the distance is going to be plus 100 inside, which is actually, given what we've seen so far, it's very reasonable for 8,800, I have to say. We haven't really come up with great favorites yet, so almost minus 110 at 8,800 is pretty good. Now, he doesn't have grappling upside, which is a little annoying, though, so I would consider him kind of like a play. Like, I think he's very similar to Gant, all right, for different reasons. So I think they're very, very similar here as far as like my desire to play them. Tokos, I mean, look, he's got 5 and 3 takedowns in his last 2 fights. I mean, the hell if he doesn't go for them again. So if he wins, it's going to be because he's gotten takedowns. So how do you not play him? So here's another one. I mean, another very, very decent underdog here. And I tell you, I haven't come across a slate where I like this money underdogs in quite a while. So this could be a fun one. Okay, moving on. We have Chaos Williams versus Nikolai Veretennikov. So this fight's got the pricing, right? 8,300, 7,900. Does it have the upside, though? All right, let's take a look. I have a feeling just because it's Chaos Williams, you're going to get a decent inside the distance line here on both these guys. Let's see. Chaos Williams inside. No, look at that. Plus 280, plus 230. I guess that's okay. Veretennikov plus 260. So, I mean, as far as metrics go, it's honestly very similar to this Gurule fight. So I'm going to treat them both the same. I mean, I'll take a look at ownership when I make them tomorrow. But I think it's reasonable. I think it's reasonable more for the pricing than for the metrics. And do I have a favorite of these two? No, not really. So I think this fight in general, I treat this the same as that Gurule fight. And I probably would get market weight on both sides. Boy, you got a whole bunch of these, huh? And we haven't even gotten to Bukakis yet. So now we have Sopaj versus Kwamba. Boy, this is a strange one to have Sopaj as the favorite. It just feels so weird. I mean, because he barely able to beat Tercios, who's really bad. He did get 3 takedowns against Oliveira before getting knocked out. So I guess he is going to probably go for takedowns. But you know what? Kwamba's pretty good, too, with his takedown. So, I bet you the inside the distance line is poor. We'll take a look at it. Yeah, this looks very similar. Okay, Kwamba, his inside the distance line is just not good enough. This has got to be a little bit worse, this Sopaj fight. Just because of the lack of inside the distance. But you know what? With all this grappling that can go on, it's a lot of volume, a lot of stuff. I don't know. Boy, for a low-level card, I really think that this one could create a unique lineup. I really do. I think someone can win 100,000 on his own here. So let's get on with it. So Modestas Bukauskas, Christian Edwards, from a pure dollar perspective and from a pure math perspective, Bukauskas is a lock. Okay, he's minus 300 to win, and he's 8,300. You just have to play him in all low-risk contests. All right. Now, I don't even know what his inside the distance line is going to be. I imagine it's going to be minus 110, something like that. In either case, I mean, he's just something you have to start your lineups with. So here's a question, though. What do you do with Christian Edwards? Right? Is Christian Edwards a good play? Well, let's say, here's the difference between, I alluded to before, here's the difference between when someone is valued because of a line movement versus someone who's a value because of a replacement fighter. Okay, so if this were, let's just say that this fight was always the same, was Modestas Bukauskas, Christian Edwards. It started off at Pick'em. These guys are priced the way they were priced, and then the line moved to make it Modestas Bukauskas minus 300. Okay, then in that case, Bukauskas would be obviously a theoretical lock, and Christian Edwards though would be unplayable, right? Because he would then be still priced as normal, and now he'd be a plus 300 underdog. So the difference now is that Christian Edwards, he was added to late, so they actually gave him a fair price. Like they priced him given his plus 300 price tag here. So he's 6,900, which to me, I can't tell you that that's not a fair price. So why does that make a difference? It makes a difference because Bukauskas is going to be 60% owned. Because he should be. I mean, when you're minus 300 and you're 8,300, that's what your price should be. That's what your ownership should be. As a result, if you can make a case to play Edwards, you're getting significant leverage on Bukauskas. And the good news is that you can't tell me that Edwards is not a good play because he's priced at 6,900, he's plus 300, and so unless there's something I'm missing, he's probably fair. He's probably fairly priced. So if you want to give me someone fairly priced against someone who's going to be 60% owned, you're going to have to. I'm going to have to take it. So my advice in these types of replacement fighter contests is always to play the fairly priced opponent against the equity lock. So I like Edwards quite a bit here in GPPs. I will end up playing. You can make an argument to lock this fight in really. And lock it in at market weight and at odds weight. Like if he's 3-1 Bukauskas, then play 75% Bukauskas and 25% Edwards. I think it's very, very reasonable. Just because of that leverage you get when you get there with Edwards. Okay, moving on. We have Malcolm Wellmaker versus Juan Diaz. Wellmaker at 9,200. He's going to have a very strong inside the distance line here. Let's take a look at it. I think you're going to get it, though. Let's see. Wellmaker inside the distance is, right there, plus 100. Pretty close. Pretty close. I regard him as very similar to these other cats. To Gantz, to Urslan. So we're talking about favorites. I think all three of these are very similar. What about Diaz? I mean, I've heard cases made for him. Let's look at his inside the distance line. We're gonna let the metrics kind of drive us here. No, it's not gonna work. He's plus 5,600 inside the distance, so no good. So Wellmaker, yes. Diaz, no. All right, co-main event, Dooho Choi versus Daniel Santos. Let's take a look at the pricing. Another mid-range price, 8,400 versus 7,800. Let's take a look at the inside the distance line here. Probably going to look very similar, right? Plus 250, plus 300 for each of them. Let's take a look. Actually, this one, Santos is pretty juicy at plus 170. Plus 170, 8,300, that is significantly better than any of these other mid-range inside the distance lines that we've looked at. So I like that quite a bit. I like actually Santos better than some of these other mid-range guys. And the other thing about this is that I don't think Santos is going to be particularly popular. When I've been looking at the content, I think I'm hearing a lot of Dooho Choi love as the small underdog here. So I think that Santos is going to be overlooked relative to his metrics. So I actually like him quite a bit. And Dooho Choi, similar to all these others, like the plus 300, 7,700, I think he's reasonable. And then we get to the main event here, and I think that both these guys are going to be 30, 35% owned because it's the main event. And I have to say, I think I've made enough cases for these other guys and girls, whatever, that you don't need to play too much of this. I mean, you should play it, whatever, but Arnold Allen doesn't really score all that much. I was going to say in wins, he hasn't won in a while. Like here, he won against Jakazi, 54 fantasy points. He got a second round KO against Cater, 81. That's not going to work. This fight was I remember this fight, the Hooker fight. But aside from that, he's not a DFS scorer. I mean, I don't think I really play any of him. I mean, honestly, and on the other side, I think Costa's probably the guy I would play. I mean, he at least comes out wrecking. You know what I mean? He's got knockdowns and takedowns and reversals and all that stuff. So if anything, I would actually play the Costa side here. So Allen, you know what? I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna full fade the Arnold Allen side. I just don't. I'm just not interested. So in general, I mean overall, this is a really, really good GPP card. Okay, there's a lot of different dudes you can play, and one of them is not necessarily the main event favorite. So I'm gonna try again to do a betting breakdown if I feel like it. If I have time. And then I'm again going to try to do a lineup construction video a little closer to lock if I'm around. But aside from that, I mean, listen, it's not the greatest quality, but from a GPP perspective, I think you can really do some damage here. All right, that's going to do it. Good luck, everybody.